All right. Welcome. My name is Gary Alton. I'm the managing partner of the Employee Benefits Division at the Partners Group, and I'm here pleased presenting with Nicole Pond, who is the managing consultant of our retirement division. Today we're going to be talking about really about attracting and retaining quality employees. From an agenda standpoint, we'll give you a quick overview of the Partners Group, but we really want to get into and spend some time on attracting and retaining quality employees, some traditional and non-traditional benefit trends that we're seeing in the marketplace, and then have Nicole talk about some of the trends that she's seen in the retirement space. And with that, we're just going to jump right into it. Now, obviously, the Partners Group, we're focused on employee benefits today, but we do work through 4 different divisions, all coordinated together. Employee benefits, we do a lot of wealth management. That is assets under management, investment planning for individuals, commercial and individual insurance, and then we also have business consulting, and that's more for project-based work, working with some of our larger clients. And again, as we want to talk about today, attracting and retaining quality employees, that is becoming a hotter and hotter subject out there. A lot of challenges in the marketplace. And just if you think about how much has changed over the last 5 years, and if you look back even further, here's a couple interesting ads that we've pulled out of the archives. It's amazing what you can find when you do a Google search. But this is actually an ad from the 1950s about recommending soda pop for your kids. And the question is, how soon is too soon? You know, things have definitely changed. We look at this one, cigarette ad. More doctors smoke Camel cigarettes than any other cigarette in the marketplace. I'd say things have changed a little bit from there. More recently, you look at George Lucas, 1983 to 2005 with the green screen. So again, just examples of how the world has changed. We're going to talk more about that with regards to the demographics in the workforce and some of the things that we're seeing out there today. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Nicole. If you could just give us a little bit of a feel of what you're seeing in the marketplace.
As we have noted here, there's really become a stepped-up competition for talent. A recent study put out by SHRM in March this year really talked about how do employers deal with this issue. And so some of the things that they are recommending is creating that strong employer brand. So how do we create that loyalty with your employees through branding? What type of environment do you have at work? How are you creating that great place for your employees to come to work every day? How are you creating that strategies and increased flexibility? The other great thing with building that strong brand is your employees are your brand. And so part of it is thinking about who are those employees that you're trying to attract and retain, because that is your brand. The other thing key with HR is there's greater pressure on them to provide data. So when you think about different positions that we're in, a lot of times we're used to using data to drive those decisions. And so what we're seeing is now that demand is being put on HR. So the growing importance of big data presents human resource practitioners with an opportunity and also puts them under pressure. Because what we're seeing is business owners are really wanting their HR professionals to use data to help them make decisions and derive issues in the workplace. So we're thinking about recruiting and retaining talent. How are we using data to justify those key expenses?
So recently we looked at a recent MetLife study and found some interesting statistics. So you can see here that when employers, and there was over 2,600 employers that participated in the survey, these were the top 5 things that they were focused on. Retaining employees, controlling costs, increasing employee productivity, also increasing employee satisfaction, and increasing employee loyalty. Now, it's probably not surprising that these were the top 5 on the list, but what was surprising was how big a percentage it was. Also, if you look at it, 4 of the 5 conflict typically with controlling health plan costs. So a lot of times you think that we need to add more benefits in order to make employees more satisfied, make them more loyal, make them more productive. That's not always the case. So again, we're going to be talking about that as we go through the presentation. And Nicole, could you just talk a little bit about some of the changing demographics that we're seeing in the workforce today?
So according to the U.S. Census Bureau, we can see that by 2020, millennials will actually be half the workforce. And so when you're thinking about recruiting and retaining talent and thinking about how do you attract this key workforce and how they're going to be taking over the majority of the workforce by the time we get to 2040, and then we're going to have a multi-generational communication. And so there was a great example put out recently by the MIT Age Lab to address this and just giving us perspective on a cross-generational communication. When one statement is made, how do we hear 4 different questions? And so when we hear, we need to get this project done. If I'm someone between the age of 65 and 70, I hear urgent and immediate action. If I'm between age 52 to 57, I hear it's an order. If I am between age 36 and 51 or Generation X, I hear it's an observation, not necessarily a command, nor immediate. Now, if I'm a millennial, someone between 22 and 34, I hear call for collaboration. And so when you think about that one statement, and there was 4 different messages that were posed. So when you're thinking from a leadership perspective, how do you communicate that? This is some of the key things our employers are dealing with. When it's communicating employee benefits, when it's communicating retirement, or when it's just communicating across our groups in general. And so on the next screen here, what we see is by 2020, 1 in 4 employees will be over the age of 55. And so what that actually means is what we're going to start seeing is a transition of knowledge. Next slide. And so what we're going to start seeing is actually an exit of knowledge. And so as people are retiring, they're taking that knowledge with them. We're not doing a good job in the workforce of transitioning that knowledge base. And so what we're finding is key areas like engineering, finance, doctors, nurses, infrastructure, that knowledge base is starting to exit into retirement. And so how do we deal with that and not lose that as an employer as we're trying to also bring up our younger workforce? And so this was a great study put out this year by Deloitte, and they call it their Millennial Survey. And so with this survey, they're really looking at millennials' perspective of millennials' viewpoint. I've got one foot out the door. And so if you're an employer and you hear that, you're kind of freaking out right now because you're thinking, wow, if I look at my generation of my workforce, how many are thinking this? And so this survey was very interesting because it said what percentage expect to leave their employer in less than 6 months? 66%. That's a huge portion of millennials that are thinking of leaving their position. And so as an employer, how do we retain these key employees? And one of the biggest things that millennials are stating is they're feeling that there's a lack of opportunity when it comes to leadership and expanding in their career. And so if we know that we have a transitioning workforce, that by 2020, 1 in 4 are going to be over 55 and starting to look towards retirement, how do we create maybe more of a leadership or mentorship program to start transitioning that knowledge from those that are retiring into our millennial workforce? And it can create that great opportunity of mentorship and also fulfill the needs that millennials have of really wanting to grow and further themselves in their career and be given those leadership opportunities. And so when we look at the values that millennials are really looking at for that long-term business success, they're really putting 26% of their viewpoint when looking at a company or a current company is on employee satisfaction, loyalty, and fair treatment. We're looking at 25% on ethics, trust, integrity, and honesty, and 19% on customer care and focus. And so with this data here put out by MetLife, and so employees who believe workplace benefits ease their health and financial worries, this was very interesting because you can see that starting in 2010, there was almost 40% who felt this way. Now as we look at 2015, 5 years later, actually 50%, so we've seen a 10% increase, really feel that workplace benefits are easing their health and financial worry. So we just learned that 50% of employees feel that having the financial wellness program as part of their benefit package really helps them feel more at ease with their finances. Well, what about that other 50%? And so when we think about employees who are feeling in control, they're only really seeing that 42% are feeling in control. So then we have to think about that other side. What is that other side really thinking about? And so it's really interesting then, again, taking that across the generations. And so we see from right to left, baby boomers are really saying, you know, I've got this, I feel comfortable with where I'm at, I don't need my employer to help me, I don't need to rely on my family. But as we look at Generation X and really at millennials, they're wanting that coach, especially the millennial group wants that coach, wants someone to guide them through that process.